And the Pentagon has recently issued out a warning to troops to not eat poppy seeds. They say it's due to the effects they have on the body to show up positive in various drug tests. KLTV7 Soraya Bond spoke with Dr. Ed Dominguez to find out more.
Shortly after you eat it, as little as one poppy seed bagel can give you a positive urine drug test for opiates.
Dr. Ed Dominguez is a med team doctor and an infectious disease specialist. He says a positive drug test for opioids means testing positive for drugs such as heroin, morphine, and codeine.
Because the chemical in the poppy seed is very similar to those. And unless you have a test that looks specifically for codeine, you're going to potentially get a false positive.
This has been a concern for those in the military and those who are drug tested regularly.
For people who have been unduly released from the military or sanctioned by the military, and it turns out that poppy seeds were the problem, the military has now said, please stay away from poppy seeds.
Dr. Dominguez says drug tests can show up positive up to 16 hours just after one bagel.
There are muffins that can contain that, just typically baked goods, as I understand it. And then there are some other unique dishes. Some of them may be more ethnic dishes from the Middle East or from other countries where they use poppy seeds as one of the ingredients.
He says there are solutions to possibly reduce a false positive test.
The military is trying to convert or pivot to these new drug tests that look specifically for codeine in the urine and not just for not for the precursor or the what we call the pre-drug or pro-drug to codeine, which is a kind of a methyl codeine type of compound that is found in the poppy seeds.
Hair tests are also a solution, but he says that most employers provide a urine test. Soraya Bond, KLTV 7 News.
And according to the Department of Defense mandated its drug demand reduction program in 1981. It was given orders to deter military personnel from abusing illicit drugs or misuse prescription drugs.